Spain's first election in nearly 4 years has proved inconclusive. The closely run contest could now see Spain's voters return to the polls again this year. Each side of the political divide is looking to secure enough seats to form a coalition government. Our Ken Brown has the details.
A dramatic night in Spanish politics that left more questions than answers. The headquarters of the Partido Popular were prepared for a big night of celebrations. The centre-right party were predicted to race into government with the help of the far-right Vox party. That didn't happen. While the PP won the most votes, they fell short of the 176 seats needed to form a coalition with their hardline partners. Vox underperformed and lost nearly a third of the seats they won last time out. As the results poured in, it became increasingly clear that Pedro Sanchez and his Socialist Workers' Party PSOE fared better than expected, marginally improving their position compared to 2019. The left-wing platform Sumar, which encompasses a dozen parties, gained a 12% share of the vote, giving the acting government strong support but not enough to get them over the line. Experts believe this election has given a clear sign of the changing political landscape in Spain.
People had become a little bit scary of the extremes, and now there is a movement towards a centripetal movement towards the center. All right, now so voters are actually starting to make sense of all this like crazy scenario with the polarization, and they are moving towards the center, and that's good news probably for democracy, and not to play on the extremes as much as we have been playing until now.
With a hung parliament increasingly likely, weeks of negotiations will now be needed to see if either side can garner enough support from smaller regional parties to form a coalition. Right now, there doesn't appear to be a clear path ahead for the right or the left to form a government. Brussels will have kept a close watch on Sunday night's elections. Spain currently holds the 6-month rotating presidency of the EU, and they will be keen to see an established coalition formed at the earliest possible stage. Congress won't reconvene until mid-August, where both sides will seek to garner enough support to form a coalition government, putting their Prime Minister candidates forward in a vote. If they fail to vote in a winner, then 2 months later, Spain will once again go to the polls. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
Very fascinating. Let's take a deeper dive into Spain's election. And for that, we're going to bring in Scheherazade Rehman. She is a professor of international affairs and international business at George Washington University. Thanks very much for joining us. And I must ask you first, I hope I got your name correct as well.
Thank you. Yes, you did.
Okay. Let's talk about the results. When I left here Friday evening, listening to all the media reports, I thought it was going to be a right-wing victory by everything that everybody had said. That didn't pan out. What happened? And it's very fascinating where things go from here.
Absolutely. So what happened was, as you know, the right wing was poised. The Partido Popular was supposed to actually garner all the votes. And what ended up happening was a backlash, because when they called for snap elections, they were hoping to sweep the landscape, and they fell short. And in May, they had some regional elections, and they swept those and decimated the Prime Minister's party. But they didn't have a legislative majority, and because of that, in May, they had to form a coalition with this very new 4-year-old, very hard right Vox party. And in doing so, basically, they began their own demise in the general election, because the Vox party, which is hostile to green energy, hostile to multiculturalism, hostile to feminist movements, hostile to the LBG community, basically they ran with this, and they made shambles over the last couple of months in the regional cities and locales, by enacting laws against flags, enacting laws against theater, enacting laws for closing bike lanes. And this chaos really hurt the right-wing centrist party, and that's why they are in the position they are in right now.
Just even with that, if this was built into the markets that the conservative side was going to win, generally the markets don't like to be surprised. How did the business community react?
Well, I mean, we are surprised. This is the best of the situation and the worst of the situation. It's the best of the situation, as the Prime Minister puts it. He stopped the march towards the hard right in Europe, right? By not having by having the situation. The worst of the situation is Spain has no tradition of sharing power, especially between these two dominant parties. So there's not going to be any German-style grand coalition here. And as people move more towards the center, getting a ruling majority is going to be very, very difficult because they need 176 seats, and they're all falling short here. And the conservative parties, the PP party,
right,
is now very hesitant to hang its ribbons with the Vox party because it cost them this general election.
Now, the left-leaning party had really put in so many policies that the conservative members had vowed to undo. So how did the economy, what role did the economy play in this election?
So I'm glad you asked that because a lot of this is pinned on, Spain still being a very conservative society, and this is a backlash towards some of the more liberal laws, the rape laws and the feminist laws that have been put into place. At the heart of this is really the economy. Now, the data on paper looks really good for Spain. They have had phenomenal growth in 2020 and 2021. 21 and 22. And this year they're poised to grow at 1.9%, which is probably one of the fastest rates in Europe. But this is just data on paper. What's really happening in Spain is Spain has the highest unemployment ratio in the European Union. And it's most of its citizens are living below their purchasing power in the past, and they're really, really hurting. So at the heart of this is an economic disparity that is happening in Spain that the numbers are not showing, which is why you see populist movements come about, as you've seen in Italy as well.
You talked about this perhaps pumping the brakes on the turn toward hard right in Europe. What do you think the EU is thinking right now, and what about the people in Spain? I mean, as I understand it, would have been the first conservative government, right-wing government since General Franco back in the late 1970s?
That's correct. In the mid-1970s when he passed away, we came to a new era, and Spain has had a very allergic reaction to anything hard right until recently, right? And partly because of the way this government has gone. The European Union, without question, is watching and monitoring this very, very closely because Spain holds the presidency for 6 months. And what that means is that you are in control of the political agenda for the European Union for 6 months. Of course, having not a centrist party with a hard right coalition would create a very different agenda than, for example, the current government. So, given the way that Sweden and Italy have gone, and Finland as well, the Europeans are watching this very carefully. It's not over yet,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not over yet. There's going to be a lot of negotiations between now and the next couple of months.
I have a two-part question for you. First, I want to hear about the green energy policies and the transition. And secondly, where does Spain go from here? When will things be carved in stone? This is how the government is moving forward.
Well, so let me answer the second question first. Until somebody has a ruling majority, nothing is going to get settled.
Right, so how long should that take?
Well, it's going to be 2 months, right? And then they will have to call for fresh elections. And now this is not new in Spain. They had fresh elections in 2015-16 and then again in 2019. So this was a snap election because the PP thought that they could garner the win that they had in May and with that momentum win the July general election. Because the elections were actually supposed to be in November. And so they called for snap elections and it backfired on them to some extent. So until this is bedded down and the king asks someone to form a government, until this actually gets done, there is no road ahead for Spain right now.
Wow.
Because both parties have very, very different agendas.
Absolutely. There's no question there. I want to thank you so much for coming on and putting this in focus for us. Hopefully we'll talk with you again in a couple of months when this is all hammered out. In the meantime, please stay cool. I know Spain is as hot as the United States is right now. Thank you.